my keyboard came in the mail today. A mass drop group buy for distributing this XMIT Hall Effect keyboard made in fall 2016. I think this is the first Hall Effect keyboard that's been produced for the 21st century. Their design that was more popular in the 1970s through 80s, and I am not aware of anything that still uses Hall Effect keys up until now. So definitely cool to have new retro technology. And they were brought to market by these guys, XMIT, who have been active on the mechanical keyboard enthusiast communities, such as the mechanical keyboard section of Reddit, Deskthority, and also GeekHack. Basically, every step of the way through designing this keyboard, they updated people on the progress and told them what flaws they had found and what improvements they are making. So it's been very exciting to watch this and to actually have a Hall Effect keyboard, which isn't antique, as a potential prospect for anyone who is sort of an enthusiast with exotic keyboards. So this is the instruction manual that I'm holding, the keyboard's behind it. There's also some history about Hall Effect switches, which is interesting. One of the most notable parts is you'll see these switches are rated to 100 million cycles. So in theory, Hall Effect keyboard switches are going to be the most wear-resistant and most long-lasting keyboard switches possible. And it's just because the design is very smart. And you'll see down here, 1970s, still used in mission-critical applications where switches cannot fail. So the design is great for preventing failure because it is so efficient, I suppose, is the correct term to use. Used in nuclear reactors, spacecraft, missile silos, and other big deal stuff, especially, and you'll find this with the antiques, Honeywell mainframe terminals. So, I won't get through the whole instruction booklet, but there's plenty in here, and there is a lot about, oh, look at this, firmware programming tool. So, the firmware cannot be programmed right now, and it looks like that's going to come at some point. Inside of the keyboard is actually a really pretty beefy ARM. It's like a 32-bit ARM processor inside of this, making it all work. So it could be programmed, and probably a hefty piece of firmware could be put on here with custom options. And I don't know when or how that's going to happen, but it would be really cool if it did, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of excited people. So apparently it's going to be available at xmitkeyboards.com in the future. www.xmitkeyboards.com in the future. So I'd like to see that. Also, I would like to see this keyboard as a ortholinear, or the switches use an ortholinear option. Maybe one day, like Ergodox or Atrius or something like that would be really cool. But I like ortholinear keyboards, but I also like novelties, and this is really novel. Not only are the switches cool, but it's a bamboo case, if you hadn't been able to tell already. So that's definitely something you would get with a keyboard made in China. And if they hadn't made it in China, I don't know if they would have had this bamboo case option as readily as they did. So that's fun. I kind of like, renewable things and green stuff, so bamboo is a cool aesthetic for me. The keycaps are interesting. They are double shot PBT, so that might be, it's probably POM used for the clear bits, and then PBT used for the white bits. Interesting thing about PBT, if you don't know, is it's very, very hard and resistant to wear. Most keyboards that are for sale commonly available, especially on certain laptops, well, probably the majority of laptops and the majority of keyboards, use ABS plastic for their keycaps, and ABS plastic wears out very easily. They're also usually painted with legends on them, so continual typing on the keyboard like this will just rub the legends off, which is no fun. However, because this is double shot, that means there's actually two kinds of plastic in here. So you can probably see, maybe you can't see. Actually, here's what I can do. You can see the light shining through there. So there's a clear plastic, which is basically filling the back side of the top part of the keycap, and the rest of it is a white plastic. That's really good, and as far as you know, from a durability standpoint. But not only, you know, is the plastic stronger, but most keycaps that are designed for backlit keyboards like this, they're just clear plastic with white paint on them, if they're going to be white, or if they're black, it's black paint. And the paint rubs off if you use the keyboard really hard. So these keycaps are going to last a while. They're a really awesome choice for a keyboard like this. You'll probably never have to replace the keycaps like you might want to do on other mechanical keyboards, because these keycaps are just, they rock. There are a few imperfections. I noticed that there's sort of like a bump in the smoothness on the home key, and the spacebar does have a little bit of odd texture to it, but none of it is something that you would notice through normal use. You absolutely wouldn't notice it. You would only notice it if you were like studying the keyboard, looking for any kind of tiny little flaw to pick at. And those are really tiny flaws. They're not a big deal. There is one flaw, and they were trying to hammer this out when they were working on getting these ready for shipping, and I guess they did a good job of preventing it. And that is, when you turn the keyboard upside down, the problem would be the keycaps would fall out. And I guess that has to do with the construction of the molds on this keyboard when they were producing it. You don't have that problem. However, that is the key switch right there. This key switch has some nice springs that are very hard. They are 70-gram springs. I don't know if you're going to have this problem on the 50-gram spring one, but the 70-gram spring ones will push those keycaps up pretty hard. So if I do this, there you go. It actually pops off. Now, I was basically just abusing my keyboard right there. No one is ever going to do that for no reason, is pressing a key like hundreds of times in a way that would cause it to fly off. No one is really ever going to do that. But it happens on this. So, again, I don't think anyone is ever going to type on a keyboard like that. It definitely wouldn't happen if you were just typing, you know, normal words and stuff. That would never happen. But if you are, you know, fidgeting with your keyboard and doing stupid stuff, then yeah, the keys might fly off. Not a big deal. And if it ever happened to be that one of these keys would fly off and you would lose it, this is probably the cheapest keycap set that's white and double shot PBT out there. So it wouldn't be an arm and a leg to replace. I think this whole set could probably be had for like 25 bucks if you go to the right Asian website to order it. So yeah, that's probably the only, you know, two flaws that I can think of right now is can't be programmed, not yet anyways, and also the keycaps do have, you know, a little bit of quirks, but otherwise it's really, really good. And of course, you've got the Hall effect switches. So if you look at this carefully, I don't know if this camera's going to zoom in or not, but there's this wide housing, and the stem is a lot more exposed than it is on a cherry-style mechanical switch, which is the most popular kind of mechanical switch. It's also wider than, you know, like a Madi-S or an Alps type switch, and maybe the same. Well, no, it is definitely wider than a Topre one, even though Topre ones are pretty wide. So yeah, that is kind of interesting. For anyone who really cares about linear keyboards, this feels really good. Like if you felt a cherry switch or any other kind of linear switch, they're okay, but this is better. Like it really is. It feels right. So in theory, these are the best kind of switches you could possibly have on a keyboard. In execution, yes, they are probably the best kind of linear switches you can have on a keyboard. They feel really great. One thing that people were saying when they were looking at this was you would not be able to put O-rings on them to silence them. So you can hear when I strike this down, the downstroke, that can be loud. There's sort of like a sharp clack. Here, I do have an O-ring which actually fits. It's not as sharp. It's more of a thud with the O-ring. This is sharp and clacky. This is more of a thud. So, what kind of O-ring did I use on this? Well, there are O-rings made by these dudes, lpwl.bigcartel.com. I think they're based out of somewhere in Europe, maybe France. And they make these cool, I'll show you down here on my wrist pad, O-rings. So to the left, the first left is basically what you'd have with a normal O-ring. That's the size you'd expect. Then to the right of that in the middle, there's the thick, and then to the far right, there's the extra thick. The extra thick I put on those, and it does do the job, but so does thick. So I don't know if you really want to go all out and get the extra thick. It makes a little bit of a difference, but just the normal thick works. And if you happen to use like DSA keycaps from Signature Plastics, like I have on this Atreus right here, you'll want to use just the regular thick ones. The extra thicks don't really help on these, so if you amass a lot of keyboards, I would just go for the normal thick ones. Extra thick is probably, you know, overkill, and I don't know if you're going to be able to use it on other keyboards too. Nevertheless, some people like it. But yeah, I put a thick one on here, and it seems to dampen it pretty well. So if I actually got a whole bag of thick ones, then I would probably do this whole keyboard just for fun. Yeah, and I don't know if there's anything else I have to say about it. It's cool. It's really nice to have it. It feels great to have a piece of, I guess, I don't know if this is really history in the making, but to have a piece of retro technology that's new is pretty cool, especially when it hasn't been available before. So yeah, great keyboard, and I hope these guys keep them coming.